Anything. Actually, I prefer not to even call it commercial. It's just complex assignments. We've got a whole team that works on these complex assignments. There may be a lot of stuff that you get involved with that might be coined commercial in my world, which really isn't. It's a residential multifamily property or something, a subdivision or some land that has a slightly different highest and best use and so on. So a very good reason for getting all of your listings appraised in advance is to make sure that you're listing it and promoting it at its highest and best use. Sometimes if it's a big enough piece of property, there could be multiple highest and best uses. Maybe you're on a primary road, so the front part could be retail and the back part could be on townhouses or something. So we get into all of that, and our job is to come out and help you look good, help you get it priced right, and then stay with you throughout the transaction. And we call this our consultation appraisal. And we're gonna come out and, usually when you go do your listing presentation, you say, hey, maybe we should, clean these carpets, we should paint this wall, we should do that. We're gonna concur on all those types of things, but we're gonna try to take it to a slightly higher level. If we can convert that large half bathroom into a full bath, now this room next door that you think is a bedroom now really becomes a bedroom, and you can market it for much more and advertise it appropriately and so on. So we can do all that. And then the most important part is that we're there for you at the end. I want you to have that appraisal and be able to put it out on the dining room table to show buyers what this property is truly worth. It cuts down our negotiation. And then I want you to give it to that bank appraiser when they come out. So, there's a lot of appraisers who all they do is just bank appraisal work, and that's fine. There's no different license for that. There's no real different form. There's no different way the appraisal is done, but they get in a rut of just going out and trying to meet or match a number that's given to them. We do all kinds of valuations, most of which we have no idea what the value is worth, so we're a lot better at zeroing in on the right number. Also, many of you may be listing properties that become more complex in our world due to the fact that there's so few sales out there. So you might think, oh my God, this is a slam dunk ranch on a finished basement. I'm gonna get 15 people to show up on the first day and give me offers, and that may actually happen. It may turn out to be one of the hardest assignments I've had in months because there are no ranches on basements. Everything's two-story or what have you. So part of our job when we come out in advance is to identify any of these issues that you might have and help get them corrected. Also, we'll look at it through the lens of an FHA appraiser or a VA appraiser. So we're going to talk a little bit about that too and make sure that you've taken care of any of those issues. I know we have at least one fan in here that uses our inspection division. We also have a home inspection division, and I highly recommend you try them. They're excellent, and I've made very sure that they have the same corporate culture that D.S. Murphy has, that they've got very good bedside manner. They're not going to be the buckhead butcher and tear up deals. And that works on both sides, right? I mean, maybe as a buyer's agent, you want that person to go in and be real hard. And our guys will go in and find what needs to be addressed and talked about, but we'll talk to your client and educate them that every house needs some work and what have you. One recommendation I might make, which is a little difficult to sell your sellers on, is do our bundle package in advance. Do an appraisal and an inspection. Your seller's gonna say, I don't wanna have it inspected before because I don't wanna know what's wrong with my house. Well, that's kind of short-sighted, because what happens when your property goes under contract with that buyer, you've agreed upon a sales price, then the home inspector comes out and finds $7,000 worth of work to be done. Who's paying for that? Are you splitting it with the buyer? No, it's all being paid by the seller. So why not have those things addressed in advance, then be able to market the property at a higher price, and then not have these issues down the road, which may totally, having those repairs afterwards could scare buyers off. So getting it done in advance. So something to think about. Let's see.
$5,000 for a new septic system.
Yep, there you go. Yep. So, and we can do all the ancillary services, radon, mold, pool inspections, all that kind of stuff. So. Comparables is an interesting word. We all kind of throw that around, right? What is a comparable? What's a comp? You may have 10 sales in a given neighborhood, but not all of those are going to be comparable. So don't force yourself, don't force the system to try to use every single sale that's in your neighborhood. You obviously want to look at everything, but if a typical buyer would not look at that property when they were looking at your property, then it should not be used. So just because it's in the same subdivision doesn't mean the appraiser has to use it. You may have heard things like that. Well, the appraiser has to stay in the subdivision, or the appraiser, how far is an appraiser allowed to go for comparables?
5 miles?
5 miles?
Okay. There's a Fannie Mae guideline that says 1 mile for suburban and 5 miles for rural. Now that's just a guideline. You know, there are many subdivisions that y'all probably work in that are in a suburban area. The subdivision itself is 2 or 3 miles wide, right? So that just doesn't make any sense to enforce it as a strict rule. It's certainly a good idea to stay within a mile, but there's no report that goes out of my office that doesn't violate some of these Fannie Mae guidelines. Same thing with time. How far back am I allowed to go for comparables? 6 months, 12 months, what have you. It's kind of varied as far as Fannie Mae's guideline, but the idea is you really don't want to go back any further than you have to. Going back over a year is going to raise eyebrows, but you know, sometimes you have to do it. I just reviewed one today that our office sent out, and it was a relatively small subdivision. It was a little infill enclave of about 25 homes. The last sale was May of 22, so a year and a half ago. We used it. You got to, because you got to have an anchor in there. It was a very good comp. So all I had to do then was adjust for time. So it was a simple process. Now, when we do exceed some of these major guidelines that Fannie Mae has, we want to add additional comparables if possible, so that we're not just relying on 3 comps that violate these guidelines. But there is no limit to how many comparables I can use in an appraisal. And I would think, in my opinion, you almost can't do the typical appraisal with just 3 comps. Unless you're in one of those cookie cutter D.R. Horton or Lennar subdivisions where you've got the resales, it's just impossible. You may have also noticed on appraisals, and this may be contrary to what you think, is that appraisers are using actives and pendings. It's not just because we ran out of sold, so let's start using actives and pendings. It's a practice that we've done for many, many years. It's something we've always done, and it's not that I necessarily put weight on those, but what it does is it gives me a perspective of what the property might not be worth, right? Because if there's one across the street that's listed for $20,000 less than yours and it's identical, the buyer could go get that. It's called the theory of substitution. So we know your house isn't worth that much. So that's what that does. It also helps show the trend in the market. The pendings are super important. So if there's one thing you take from our presentation today, how important pendings are. You have a little bit of control in the appraisal process if you're the buyer's agent or the listing agent. And when the property gets under contract, the buyer already has their lender. If there's a sale that's in your subdivision neighborhood that's the ultimate comparable, that's pending, and it's closing within a week or a few days where it's not going to disrupt the timeline of your deal, you want to hold the appraiser off. Because if that order gets placed and I get the order as the appraiser, I mean, I've got 2, 3, 4 days to turn this back to the lender. Most appraisers aren't terribly busy right now. We're certainly not going to want to wait around, so they're going to immediately come out and do it. Well, if they come out and do it today and the pending doesn't close until next week, they can't use that pending at all. It'll be in their report, but they can't put any weight on it. So you can hold the appraiser off just very politely if they happen to call. Just say, hey, we need to wait for this pending sale to close, so let's schedule this for next. You can schedule it literally for the day it closes to be safe the day after it closes. And that way you'll make sure that that comp is included. So my appraisers already know to do that. So when we analyze the market, before we give you a call, if we see that, we're going to call you and say, hey, is it okay with you if we do this? Because the alternative is I can't use that. Now my value is going to come in low. I hate it. I don't want to come in low, but I have no choice. So that may be the situation. So just be aware of that. So you should work with other agents. I know you all are very competitive with each other, but sharing that type of information, especially when it gets to that point, right? You're almost to closing. It's not like there's negotiation still going on. I understand in the first few days of a contract that things need to be a little more tight-lipped. But if an appraiser calls you on your listing that's pending, please share that information, and this is exactly why. I need to know what it's under contract for, because in today's market, more often than not, it's actually above list price. And that's so important for me to have that information, because there is no place I can go to get time adjustments. I just don't open up the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. It says values are appreciating at 3%, and I use that. Because even if there was some type of big database like that, or even if I did something in FMLS or Georgia MLS, it's really, you really need to microanalyze. Isn't one part of the county maybe appreciating at a different amount, or one price point, maybe the million plus is maybe level, and if you can find a $300,000 home, those are appreciating at 1% a month again. So it's very important. So it's important for me as an appraiser to know what that's under contract for. If you feel there's a reason that you got to be a little bit more, withholding, try to talk in code. Okay, we're 1% above list, or we're whatever, as much detail as you can give us. Remember, the appraiser has an ethical obligation not to share that information with anybody else. It's going to go into the report I'm working on right now, which is going to go onto an underwriter's desk. It's not going to see the light of day. It's not going to cause a problem with your deal. So please understand that, because I get some agents, and I understand, I hold my real estate license too, so I know what goes on. I've had agents tell me, you're just going to have to wait till it closes, or you just call me back, next week. And I'm like,
I've always tried to be as nice as possible.
Thank you.
Because at some point in time, I'm going to have to, might have that rapport, so, hey, I really, really need you to use this copy.
Yeah, and there are a lot of appraisers with really big egos, but either way, it's a business relationship that you're creating, and we all want to work together. So that actually brings up a great point. Are you allowed to talk to the appraiser? You're the listing agent. The appraiser calls you, comes out to the property, and by the way, I want you to be there, or send somebody from your team to be there so you can identify who this person is and answer questions and what have you. Are you allowed to talk to that appraiser? Yes. So there's a common misconception, or there's a lot of appraisers who don't want to talk to agents, who spread the rumor that I'm not allowed to talk to you, and they give you that stiff arm, like I'm not allowed to talk to you, which is ridiculous, because only the opposite is true. I'm the chairman of the Georgia Real Estate Appraisers Board. I regulate appraisers. If we find out that an appraiser is doing that, or not going out and verifying all of their data by asking you questions and taking information in, they're going to be disciplined. So it is definitely not. You can't argue with a guy like that, right? You're supposed to talk to me. So that could go south. Can you choose the appraiser for your loan? No, and that's been the case since the financial crisis. And some good things came out of that. Loan officers up until 2009 or 10 were not licensed. So you're licensed, I'm licensed, attorneys, everybody else is licensed. And so these loan officers were selling used cars one day, and now they're doing mortgages the next. So they are now licensed. As a matter of fact, they're licensed on a higher level than we are. They're licensed on a federal level, on a national level. So they can't just mess up in Georgia and go over to Alabama and start doing mortgages. It's really cleaned up things a lot, because back before all of that, we would get calls from the loan officer saying, you came in at 175, I need 200. If you don't get 200, I'm never going to send you anything again, and I'm going to, and they just threaten people. I've got recordings and emails that I've saved over the years, and it's just ridiculous. And it also was sort of an unwritten rule a lot of times on refis, because back in that day, they would tell me as the appraiser what everybody thinks the house is supposed to be worth on a refi. So if we were going to come in low on a refi, we were supposed to talk to the loan officer, and they would get a chance to cancel the appraisal. Or there were a lot of loan officers, like, if it's a refi, if you don't come up to what we want, don't even worry about sending the report in, and you're not going to get paid. So, which is ridiculous. Yeah. So you can see the pressures that were on us, and now those are taken off. So there's some appraisers that now have flipped to the opposite, right? So they're just like, you can't touch me, which is ridiculous too. There's a lot of appraisers, well, no, there's not a lot. There's a few small number of appraisers who think you shouldn't be paying $1.3 million for this property. Well, who is it for them to say, right? We don't get to say that. Now, if the data proves it, then the data proves it. One of the issues that we've had over these last few years is values have gone up so quickly that we can't prove it yet, right? Buyers were almost buying on, that fear of missing out. They were buying on future value, and I don't have the closed sales yet to verify that number. And that's why, historically we came in low maybe 3 to 4% of the time on purchases. Over these last 2 years, 30 to 40% of the time we were coming in low. Now, we were trying to get as close as we could, but so why didn't the market just crash? because so many buyers removed the appraisal contingency, or they had the gap clauses and so on. So it's also my company's policy that if we do feel we're coming in low on a purchase, to contact both agents. This is a policy that already exists in VA, but it's better because we're going to contact you directly and say, look, we're not going to talk about exactly where I am right now, but I'm having a little trouble. What comps am I missing? Is there anything I can have? So we want to have that conversation. And also, to clarify the point that I made earlier, you can talk to an appraiser up until the time the report gets sent in. So that's why I want to call you before I send it in. Once it gets in front of the underwriter, it's locked down, right? Even if you see an error, I totally missed a bathroom, right? That would have added another $10,000 and I would have made it. You call me and I'm like, oh my God, you're right. I have no way to change it. I can't, I'm sort of locked out of the system, right? They send it through a technology portal. So what needs to happen is, if you do feel there's an error, or if you do want to rebut an appraisal, never call the appraiser back. It's only going to probably backfire on you. Go through your loan officer. Every lender has a reconsideration of value process, and that's your best bet. So if you hire us on the front end, we will do all of that for you, because I can look at that appraisal and see errors that none of you can see. I can see the things that are going to need to get fixed to get this corrected and get your loan through. Many times agents and homeowners look at different fluffy things which don't make any difference, and that's what kind of gets an appraiser upset, is you're asking me about these things that don't make any difference, So we can write a very strong, have any of you written rebuttal letters on appraisals? Okay. Any good success? Okay. A lot of times, now I will tell you that probably less than 50% of them make it to the appraiser because you haven't convinced the underwriter that there's an issue. So, yeah.
But I had a legitimate right.
Yeah.
In a specific neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
That a townhouse that backs up to I-75
Mm-hmm.
is worth less
Yeah.
than one that backs up to the pool on the other side of the property.
Yes. 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 So, I mean, appraising is a science and an art. So, Zillow's never going to take my place, and knowing and identifying these issues. What is it that's impacting the value? Why did that comparable sell for $10,000 less than the others? Because it backs up to 75. So the appraiser has to make those adjustments. We talked about these guidelines that Fannie Mae has. There's a lot of lenders out there right now that preach these as rules.
Is there a specific process for appraisals dealing with manufactured homes and mobile homes?
Yes. Manufactured homes, mobile homes, anything of that nature goes on a different form. And it's the same idea. We still find comparables and all that, but there's a whole litany of things that need to be verified and checked out to see if the property is even mortgageable. We've got to find the tags on the property. We need to find the serial numbers. A lot of things that go into doing that.
So you have the GEO plates, the PIN numbers, the
Yep.
serial numbers, and everything.
Yep. Permanent foundation.
Permanent foundation.
Never been moved. It can't be moved. Right. Yep. And all those things, then you're good. And the big challenge with them too is that there's, especially if it's in really good condition. I had one that was really good condition last week, and the only few manufactured comps we have were just in very average condition. So I had to use what we call stick-built homes, right? Regular homes. And the underwriter, of course, doesn't like that. They want them to be manufactured. I get it, but that's all there is. So, they become challenging. Yes.
I think another thing that I discovered, we had one that was like fraud that took place.
Yeah.
Then after that, asking the lender if they use a desktop valuation or.
Yes.
Because they sent, the lender in this situation sent their buyer in.
Mm-hmm.
That buyer actually intercepted and became the uploading pictures and data.
Yes.
Desktop valuation, so we came in 40,000 less.
Yes. Yes.
And then going back, everyone started scrambling when I started using language like this seems fraudulent. this
Yes.
seems concerning. But they were using a link that should have gone to the seller, which would still have been concerning.
Right.
And the buyer got it from the lender and did it themselves, so that was listed on the appraiser as the inspector
Mm-hmm.
appraiser, so then the
Mm-hmm.
buyer was attached to it.
Yes.
And so we found that going, back through, we discovered it, so we didn't negotiate with the terrorists. We just
Good. Good.
Came in over on the next round.
Yeah. Yeah.
So asking a lender, do you use a field appraisal?
Correct.
desktop can be.
And that's a really good introductory question. Do you use any of these alternative valuation processes? So, back during COVID, we had to do some, desktop or where we couldn't get in. It was very rare. We pretty much turned those down. We were like, either we get in or we don't get in. We're not going to do this. And what ended up happening is most of the lenders came back and made those appraisers eventually go back in the properties to validate the appraisal so that it could be sold off to Fannie Mae. But what Fannie Mae is doing, and they're simply yielding to market pressure. Hey, everybody's saying we want appraisals faster, we want appraisals cheaper. So they are using what are called data collectors. And a seller can be a data collector, which is very biased, as you indicated. But mostly they're hiring agents, which would be fine. Some of you might want to do that, make a little extra money. But they're also specifically targeting Uber drivers. So no offense if any of you drive for Uber, but does the typical Uber driver know anything about measuring a house, taking pictures, and identifying any major issues with the property? And they don't. Furthermore, they're only being paid $25 to $50 max to do it, and you're going to get really what you pay for. So again, we won't do any of that data collecting, because what's happening then was that data got collected and then it got input into the system, and then some other appraiser who's willing for $150 to write the report up on what's called a hybrid appraisal report and do an analysis. You're always going to get a lower number, a conservative number. There's going to be all kinds of inaccuracies in it, and again, it's really, it's a floundering program, and as I said, the company that's spearheading this is Rocket Mortgage.
ADUs are becoming a little more popular.
Yes.
What is the best approach on those? Is it a cost approach or not? Because the tendency is you're using that other dwelling unit as an income property.
Right.
That'd
AD.
be mobile.
Yeah, exactly. ADU, accessory dwelling unit. So they're very popular. Yeah. First of all, you can only have one ADU, and it has to be subordinate to the main house. So you can't have a much bigger ADU than the house.
30% of the square footage of the main.
That's the general guideline. Yes, 30% or less. It has to be it has to be legal under the zoning for the county. It also has to be legal under, if you're in an HOA. They're all clamping, or many of them are clamping down on that now. And then there's also, it gets into a very gray area, but are we talking about a single family house with an accessory dwelling unit, or are we talking about a duplex or what have you? So are there multiple meters? Are there multiple addresses? Has it been legalized by the county as having two full functioning units that you're allowed to rent both of those out? With the ADU, you're supposed to owner occupy the main house, and then you can have the accessory dwelling. So non-owner occupied on the main house is going to cause an issue with the lender.
Now, this one has one separate, so it's above the garage.
Yep.
But then they also have a full basement
Uh-huh.
as well. I mean,
Does it have a kitchen?
Yeah, it has a kitchen, a separate entrance, a separate driveway.
Yep. You have got an illegal situation. The lender will not allow you to have two separate ADUs. So finished basements with kitchens is another form of an ADU. And that's really the defining thing as a kitchen. Does it have a functioning stove and cooking source? Can somebody live in this indefinitely in that space?
I have a question.
Mhm.
In the case of a finished basement with a kitchen, even if it's on the same electric meter, it's
Yeah.
considered an ADU?
Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
Yes.
Oh.
So, and most times it is. It doesn't have to have separate meters. It doesn't have to. It just has to be separated from the main part of the house. But I mean, you can still go between the two units.